across my parents' living room windows as I sat through another lecture about financial responsibility. Their 15th floor apartment in the Wellington had been the backdrop for these conversations for 20 years. Olivia, Mom sighed, arranging herself perfectly on her imported Italian sofa, 30 years old and still renting that tiny studio downtown. When are you going to invest in something real? I sipped my tea, hiding a smile behind the cup. My living situation is just fine, Mom. Fine. Dad scoffed from his leather armchair, rustling his Wall Street Journal. You work in real estate development, for heaven's sake. Yet you can't even afford to buy a proper apartment. If only they knew what I really did at Thompson Development Group, the company I'd quietly founded 5 years ago. At least we own our apartment, Mom bragged, gesturing around the space she'd spent a fortune decorating. The Wellington is the most prestigious address in the city. And we got in early, paid only $2 million. My phone buzzed. Another successful acquisition alert. I silenced it without looking. How much are you paying in rent for that closet you call an apartment? Dad pressed. You could be building equity, making connections in a proper building like this one. About that, I started, but Mom cut me off. Did you know the Hendersons just bought the unit next door? $7 million. That's what smart investing looks like, darling. Not throwing money away on rent in some downtown hovel. I checked my watch. The timing was perfect. Speaking of investments, I said carefully, have you received the new building ownership notice yet? Dad frowned. What notice? The Wellington changed hands last month, I explained, reaching into my simple leather bag. All residents should have been notified of the new ownership structure. Impossible, Mom declared. The board would have informed us. We're founding members. Actually, I pulled out a thick folder. The board voted on it 3 weeks ago. Unanimously approved the sale to Thompson Development Group. Dad's newspaper crinkled as his hands tightened. Thompson Development? That new company that's been buying up premium properties across Manhattan. The very same, I smiled, opening the folder. Would you like to see the property deed? Why would we want to see? Mom stopped abruptly as I laid the documents on her precious coffee table. There, in clear legal language, was the truth. The Wellington, all 35 floors of Manhattan's most prestigious address, now belonged to Thompson Development Group. CO, Olivia Thompson. This is a joke, Dad sputtered, reaching for the papers. You can't possibly own this building? I finished for him. Actually, I do. Along with 12 other premium properties across the city. That tiny studio downtown you mock? It's my company's development lab, where we design the future of luxury real estate. Mom's perfectly manicured hand flew to her throat. But you're always complaining about rent. Market research, I explained, pulling out more documents. I needed to understand the rental market from the inside. While you were bragging about buying in early at $2 million, I was quietly acquiring the entire block. The Wellington is just the latest addition to my portfolio. Dad's face had gone pale as he read through the ownership papers. Thompson Development Group. That's the company that just bought the Plaza Hotel. And the Cameron Tower and the West Side Luxury Complex, I nodded. Would you like to see those deeds too? Mom's hands shook as she reached for her phone, no doubt about to Google the company she'd just discovered her financially irresponsible daughter owned. So, I continued, enjoying the stunned silence, about that rent. As the new owner, I'm adjusting the rates to reflect current market value. Your $2 million investment was smart, but it doesn't guarantee preferred pricing anymore. You're raising our rent? Dad choked out. By 40%, I confirmed, sliding over the new lease agreement. Don't worry, I'm offering all original residents a special family discount. Though in your taste. I smiled, remembering years of lectures about financial responsibility. I might need to review that policy. The sunset had deepened, casting long shadows across the apartment my parents had been so proud of. Now they sat in shocked silence, realizing their daughter owned not just this unit, but the entire building and much of the surrounding neighborhood. The new lease terms begin next month, I said, standing up. Oh, and the renovation schedule is included in your packet. We're upgrading all units to smart home technology. My downtown hovel has been testing the systems for the past year. Olivia, Mom whispered, her voice unsteady, all those times we told you to invest in property, I replied, gathering my things. I just thought bigger than a single apartment. As I headed for the door, my door technically since I owned every inch of the Wellington now, I turned back one last time. By the way, the Henderson's $7 million unit? I'm turning it into a communal workspace for residents. Prime real estate shouldn't sit empty just for status. Behind me, I heard Dad's newspaper fall to the floor as the full impact of their new reality sank in. The Wellington's prestigious lobby buzzed with chaos the next morning. Residents clustered around the newly installed digital announcement board, watching in horror as it displayed Thompson Development Group's complete renovation plans for their beloved building. Smart home integration, sustainable energy systems, community spaces? Mrs. Henderson's voice carried across the marble floors. But what about our exclusivity? I stepped out of my private elevator, installed last week without anyone noticing, wearing the same cheap clothes my mother had criticized at dinner. The lobby fell silent. Good morning, I smiled, watching recognition dawn on faces that had previously ignored me. I trust everyone received their new lease agreements? Olivia. Mrs. Henderson stammered. You're the new owner? The very same, I confirmed, pulling up the building's specs on the digital board. Today we're beginning phase 1 of our modernization project. The Wellington is about to become Manhattan's first fully integrated smart luxury residence. The crowd erupted with questions and protests. My mother appeared from the regular elevator looking like she hadn't slept. The fitness center is becoming a co-working space? Someone called out. But where will we hold our private yoga sessions? In the new rooftop wellness center, I replied, switching to that section of the plans. The one with retractable glass walls and vertical gardens. You know, from that little sustainability project Mom said I was wasting time on. Mom's face flushed as her friends turned to stare at her. For years she'd dismissed my environmental design studies as another example of her daughter's impractical dreams. But the exclusivity, Mrs. Henderson tried again, will be redefined, I cut in smoothly. True luxury isn't about keeping people out. It's about creating spaces that enhance lives. The Wellington will set new standards for sustainable luxury living. My phone buzzed with another acquisition alert. 3 more buildings added to the portfolio overnight. The Wellington was just the beginning. Your coffee, Miss Thompson. My assistant appeared with my usual cup. The mayor's office called. They want to discuss expanding the smart building initiative across the city. The lobby fell even quieter. Mom's hands clutched her designer bag as she watched her neighbors realize just how thoroughly they'd underestimated her daughter. The renovation schedule is non-negotiable, I announced, addressing the growing crowd. However, residents who sign the new lease early will have priority choice of upgraded amenities. Including, I smiled at Mrs. Henderson, the private sky gardens I designed while living in my humble downtown studio. Dad emerged from the elevator next, his usual confident stride faltering as he saw the crowd gathered around his landlord, his daughter. The property value, he began weakly, will triple once renovations are complete, I finished. Thompson Development Group's last 3 projects saw 400% returns. Not bad for someone you said would never own property. The digital board switched to a live feed of Thompson Development's other properties across Manhattan. Each one a testament to my vision of sustainable luxury, each one worth more than the Wellington's residents had ever imagined possible. But we're founding members, someone protested. We have rights. You have leases, I corrected gently, which as of last month are held by my company. Don't worry, I'm not planning to evict anyone, though the new rent calculations might encourage some natural turnover. Mom stepped forward, finally finding her voice. Olivia, all these years, while we were bragging about our $2 million apartment, I was building a real estate empire, I nodded. One that's now worth more than every apartment in this building combined. The lobby's marble floors reflected the morning sun as I pulled up more designs on the digital board. Solar panels disguised as architectural features, vertical farms integrated into balconies, and community spaces that would make the Wellington the most coveted address in the city. For entirely new reasons. Now, I said, checking the time, if you'll excuse me, I have a meeting with the City Planning Commission. We're discussing implementing my sustainability designs across all premium properties in Manhattan. As I turned to leave, Dad called out, "Why didn't you tell us?" I paused, looking back at the parents who'd spent years doubting me. Would you have believed that your financially irresponsible daughter was secretly becoming the largest luxury property owner in Manhattan? The lobby remained silent, the residents of New York's most exclusive address finally realizing that true power doesn't always look like they expected. 3 months later, I stood in my parents' apartment, now transformed into the Wellington's show unit. The smart walls glowed softly, responding to natural light. The vertical garden on their former status symbol balcony bloomed with organic herbs. "It's beautiful," Mom admitted, touching the living wall. "Nothing like what we imagined luxury could be." "That was always the problem," I replied, adjusting the environmental controls with a gesture. "You were looking backward at old definitions of success. I was building the future." Dad stood by the window, watching solar panels track the sun, invisible from the street but powering the entire building. "The property value has quadrupled," he said quietly. "And the waiting list is 3 years long," I added, pulling up the building's stats. "Turns out true luxury isn't about exclusivity, it's about innovation." The apartment's AI assistant smoothly adjusted the lighting as evening approached. Mom's designer furniture had been replaced with sustainable pieces I'd designed myself, each worth more than her entire former collection. "We were wrong," Dad finally said. "About everything." "Not everything," I smiled, showing them the latest acquisition papers. "You taught me to invest in property. I just invested in all of it." As we stood in the transformed space, watching the sunset through self-tinting windows, Mom touched my arm. Do we still have to pay the new rent?" "Of course," I laughed softly. "But I'll tell you what